Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Midlife Crisis with your hosts,
Ashley
and Traci. Pull up a chair for your seat at the table as we talk about hormone imbalance.
So there's this podcast that we listen to. The series is called Science Versus. I think you can find it anywhere. I listened to it on Spotify. I just listened to the one episode, but I think they have a lot of interesting topics that they cover. But this one particularly was hormone imbalance.
Right.
And I guess there's kind of this trend right now, not just for people in midlife, but even younger, where, they're saying your hormones might be out of whack because if you're feeling run down, not motivated or
Right.
anxious or anything like that, which are several symptoms, that you experience with any kind of imbalance. They all kind of seem to be very similar.
Yes.
And so these kids are buying, like supplements and things without getting any kind of medical,
Right.
Advice or blood work or anything like that. And they're actually creating hormonal imbalance.
Right.
Which is kind of scary.
It is, because you think that, there's so many with the internet nowadays that's, everything is at your fingertips, right? And so you're looking for a supplement and you think maybe you're getting something all organic and natural and you're getting...
I think sometimes too, it's like, what's it really going to do?
Right.
It's not an actual medicine, prescription.
Right. So you think if it doesn't work, maybe it's not going to do anything at all.
Right.
Right. Versus having an adverse effect.
Right. Thinking, this can only be good for me.
They can include pharmaceutical ingredients that are bad for you, but they're marketed towards your symptoms.
Yeah.
So you think that you're getting, being healthy.
Right. And it doesn't always necessarily mean it's bad for you. But if you don't already have a condition, then you're only creating problems for yourself, you know? So that to me was kind of terrifying. And I kind of started looking into, they talked about serotonin and estrogen, testosterone was a big one, both for male and female.
Yes. And cortisol.
Yes.
Right. And cortisol is your stress hormone.
Yes.
Right.
And it's and they did explain, that is supposed to go up and down throughout the day.
Right. Because your body makes it throughout the day and then increases it when you're stressed.
Right. And your body knows how to regulate it.
Right.
Your brain tells your body how to regulate that. So they also mentioned, people that actually do have a lack of it or, an issue with it, it's very, very minimal. Right. It's such a small percentage of the population. So, people are just assuming, I have these symptoms, when really, it all goes back to what we always talk about: healthy diet, exercise, good sleep, those types of things, because then your body is regulating it correctly.
Then it's easier to gauge, right? Yeah. But a lot of us, I think nowadays, are just feeling pretty drained now, right?
Yeah.
And a bit crappy and just trying to figure out why. So to your point, if we focus on all of the core things that we know, the diet, the exercise, those types of things.
Right.
And then, talk to your physician. I think that's really important.
Problems,
and have your hormone levels tested. Get a panel done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really important too. And then when you do that, you should also include and tell them about any and all supplements that you're taking.
Yes,
because they can help you define if you're taking something
determine if there's really an issue with what you're taking.
Which was kind of the core to that podcast episode.
Yes.
That you were, referring to, this science versus.
Right.
They were talking about some cortisol levels and this person was tested and they tested really high levels of cortisol. And, but then come to find out after further conversations that they were taking a supplement that was offsetting it. And that's why
increasing the levels.
Yeah, that's why the tests were coming back.
Yeah, I think it's really been challenging for people to find a structure or a routine and really stick to, eating 3 meals a day or 5 small meals, whatever it is that works for you.
Right.
A good sleep schedule, and your body needs that routine. And I think people have struggled in finding that since COVID and all the change with work schedules and virtual meetings and things like that. Like it's just really become a challenge to kind of get back into the groove.
Yeah.
So
100%. And not to mention, chemicals in our environment also, play a factor into, how you're feeling and can make you feel like perhaps you have a hormonal imbalance when it may not be that at all.
Yeah, some of the symptoms that they're saying to watch for, if you've tried everything and you're still having challenges, some of the symptoms that they gave for hormonal imbalance is weight gain.
Yes.
It says, this was interesting to me, a hump of fat between your shoulders.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, I've never heard that. Yeah.
So fatty deposits in your body, your torso area.
Right.
Unexplained, sometimes sudden weight loss, fatigue, muscle weakness, muscle aches, tenderness, and stiffness. Pain, stiffness, or swelling in your joints, and then increased or decreased heart rate. So those are some things to really pay attention to.
And high blood sugar, I've heard that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. But yeah, definitely things to pay attention to. And adrenal fatigue is something as well.
Right. They did talk about that a lot.
Right. From high cortisol levels to cortisol crashing, right? So it's just kind of a roller coaster with one or more of your hormones. So.
Some of the things you can do to reset your balance, again, eating properly and enough protein with every meal. That provides a lot of support. Engaging in regular exercise, maintaining a moderate weight, take care of your gut health. This is something interesting that I discovered with serotonin. I've always, they always talk about how it's something in your brain. It's a chemical in your brain. And a lot of people that actually do have like mental health disorders, it has to do with their serotonin levels. In researching some more on this, I found that only 10% is actually produced in your brain.
Wow.
About 90% is produced in your gut.
Oh, that is mind-blowing.
I know.
I wouldn't even think that. In your brain, it seems obvious.
Right.
But in your gut.
So I never knew that. And so it really made me think, okay, so, there is all this hype around gut health and digestive health and things like that. But I never, obviously thought that it affected serotonin levels. No. So that was a huge light bulb for me. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Manage your stress. A lot of people try to find remedies through prescriptions and, meditation and things like that. And those can be good, especially if they're necessary. But sometimes you just need to go to the root of the problem and go, okay, I need to take care of what's stressing me out.
Right.
And manage that.
Yes.
So whether it be your job or whether you're overextending yourself to family or friends or, anything like that.
Or all the above.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
So lower your sugar intake. And then, again, try stress reduction techniques. So also they did mention quitting smoking or using tobacco. If you smoke, I guess that can really throw things out of whack as well, which I didn't realize. I mean, obviously, there's many.
So if you're smoking, that will help throw things, your hormones out of balance?
It will, throw things off.
Or when you quit.
If you quit, then it will help everything go back in line.
Okay, got it. That makes sense.
So if you're vaping, if you're smoking, anything like that, just know that could be causing some issues.
Right.
So, again, we've talked about how difficult it is to quit that.
Yeah.
And there are resources for helping, but that is another thing that I didn't really think about. Obviously, there's a plethora of health issues.
Of course, yes.
But I didn't really know that it affected hormone levels.
Yeah, you don't associate that one to the other. So I did find an interesting website, thrivelab.com. It offers a hormonal balance assessment test online. So that's kind of interesting.
You always find these cool little quizzes.
by doctors. And of course, you put in your contact information as well, and they'll contact you, which necessarily isn't a bad thing, because perhaps you want direction and guidance and a doctor to help guide you through that. But I thought it was pretty interesting. So thrivelab.com, and all of our sources will be in our description in our podcast. So you can find them easily.
Check it out.
But But yeah, I just thought that was something that was very interesting. And there's just a plethora of things nowadays with the internet and Google, that you can find. But I think that the core is always check with your doctor, right? And find out, get, tested for your hormones.
Before you start taking anything.
Before you start doing anything. Because I think a lot of women don't even need hormone therapy.
Right. Right.
A lot of them do. And a lot of men.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a lot of studies and a lot of talk about men and testosterone. Low testosterone just makes you feel awful. And men are having an epidemic of low T right now.
It really is happening. Yeah. And they're contributing that to environment.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
But hormone replacement therapy, it doesn't, like we were just talking about, it doesn't work for all women, and it's not necessary for all women. And you have to personalize it. So I think that's why it's so important that you talk to your doctor to get on, the right path.
Right.
Because, some may not experience symptoms at all going through menopause. Those lucky, I don't know, what is that, 1%? I don't know.
My mom was in that.
Yeah.
I was hopeful that I would, it was genetic and I wouldn't have symptoms, but
unfortunately, it's personalized. But then again, I think you're going through a lot more than your mom went through, in differences, in life and how things have changed, since your mom perhaps went through it. But I thought this was interesting. Women age twice as fast as men from menopause onwards.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the moment you lose estrogen, bam, it's like you're aging twice
quickly.
as fast as men.
That's crazy.
Isn't it crazy?
It's really not fair.
Not fair? No, I was thinking that too when I read it. I was
we
like,
have to go
why is it always us? Yes, 100%. 100%.
And that statistic reminded me, you shared with me a news story that you saw about funding that has been provided.
Yes.
To do more research on menopause, which is so exciting, and I'm so glad it's finally happening.
It's so important. They've always done, they've done all these tests, since the, beginning of, Western medicine.
Right.
But never on women and never through menopause and midlife.
Lengthy clinicals and research. So, we've gone decades and decades with this being kind of a hush-hush thing, and nobody really taking the initiative to help or do anything about it. And now it's finally there. The funding's there. Doctors are interested. Yeah. And
we're trying to pass a bill for it.
Right.
And I think it'll pass
I hope so.
at this time, because I think that there's now, finally, there seems to be so much chatter about it. And women are talking about it.
Thank God.
Because it is important, you know. There's some, we'll go into different statistics later, but there's statistics on how many women, and it's a super high percentage. And I'm mad at myself right now because I have brain fog and I can't remember what that percentage is without, referencing my references.
Your notes.
But so many women in, the whole plethora of what women are doing now. We're not just secretaries. We are surgeons. We are everywhere. We're vice presidents of the United States, for goodness sakes. Yeah. But to think about, all of these high profile positions that women now hold, and
most of them are middle aged at that point in their career.
Going through menopause while they're doing that, as well as, balancing a family life and whatever else.
Yeah, there's a real push to, create awareness in the workplace so that as, a manager or a boss or even,
coworkers,
lower on the ladder. So that they're sensitive to it and they understand. And, again, we've talked about how, the brain fog and the physical symptoms.
Yes.
I think some women really get terrible headaches, and this can affect your performance at work
100%.
And your attendance.
Yes. All of the above.
So there does need to be some awareness around that and sensitivity to it, because it's crazy how we've gone decades and decades of women being accused of losing their minds and, husbands leaving them because they think they're crazy and tearing families apart, and probably women losing their jobs because they're missing work or they're not performing well. because there's no awareness around it or sensitivity to it. So
I think we've gotten a little bit better than perhaps a generation or 2 generations ago.
Definitely.
They used to put women in psychiatric wards.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's so sad.
That is so crazy. I think I was fortunate when I was going through my perimenopause and menopause. I worked at an agency where we were predominantly women and we were predominantly middle-aged women.
Yeah.
So I was just so fortunate to have my own very own support group, but also my very own focus group, because half of the women went through hormonal treatments and swore by it, and the other half didn't and were adamantly opposed to it. So it was very difficult for me to make a decision. But again, it's personalized for everyone. I tried for a couple of years to get my hormones balanced. And it just didn't happen. Yeah. But I also remember, and I believe that it was testosterone. I went to 2 separate doctors, and they both gave me the same scenario of how my body was reacting to the hormonal changes, but also how my body creates hormones altogether. Right. And I'm almost positive, I wish they each one drew on a piece of paper how, my hormones react, or what, like this is what it's supposed to do, but this is what your body does. And I'm pretty sure it was testosterone turns into estrogen. And I'm not 100% sure, and I don't have those visuals now to reference because it's been so many years ago, but they both said the same thing. Wow. And at the end of my hormonal treatment, I was only taking testosterone. So that's what tells me it was a testosterone that turns into estrogen. I still have old estrogen and progesterone prescriptions, but I just, for me, it just wasn't working. Yeah. And I don't believe you don't have to take them forever. Right. I think that you only have to take them while you're trying to balance them. But once you get through menopause and you're in postmenopause, which is where I'm at now, you don't have to take them. But
so at that point, everything kind of just falls into place and balances out.
Apparently it does. But it doesn't mean that I'm feeling great by any means, which is sad. So now I'm struggling with, where do I go from here? Right? So I was actually just looking up some mushroom supplements, and we just talked about supplements, but I'm still doing the research on it. But there are some for, cognitive changes, mental clarity. I really need it. Just like now, it's like I can't remember. Sometimes it's the simplest things. Right. And I can't remember. And it's one thing just to be chatting with you or even on the podcast, but I am still in the workforce. So
in a meeting.
Yes. And so when I just can't come up with words.
Yeah, I was going to say, I find myself sometimes trying to figure out what word I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And it's a very common word or whatever. And it's just like, what? So I'm struggling, postmenopause to try to figure out, and with my energy levels, there's just so many things. And now, as a bonus, for about the last month or 2, when I wake up every morning, my hands and my feet hurt. Oh. It's almost hard to get out of bed. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And I think once you get older, all of a sudden you just start attributing everything to old age.
Right.
And when I go to the doctor, he's like, well, you're getting older, and they attribute everything to old age. But I'm like, wait a minute. So I've been doing some research on that, and
rheumatoid arthritis
is what is coming up with the highest
symptoms,
on my search results, and I'm just in denial. I'm like, no.
Oh, it's terrible. How it runs in my family, and I mean, even my younger brother, who's not even 40 yet, has issues with his knees. He used to love playing basketball, and he can't anymore. It's just too painful. Yeah. So unfortunately, it has actually, we've started getting symptoms pretty young. I mean, I was in my 30s as well when I started getting symptoms. Yeah. And I have tendonitis on top of it. So unfortunately, it didn't start happening when I can't obviously attribute it to old age, because that's not old.
Right, or midlife,
But it is a really difficult thing to deal with. It's challenging.
Trying to get out of bed, or even if I sit for a while, at the desk position, and then try to get up. And so I
have issues just, if I spend too many hours consecutively typing.
Yeah.
I'll feel it in my hands and my arms, you know.
And they said that too. It might be carpal tunnel. I don't feel that I type enough. I have a balanced, I think, workload in how my daily routine goes, that I'm not 100% typing, and I don't think it's that. Plus the fact that it's happening to my feet as well.
Yeah.
And like a snap of the fingers, all of a sudden one morning I wake up and the first day you're just like, ow, like, okay, what's happening? But now that it keeps happening, I'm like, oh my goodness. And so my son was in a very bad motorcycle accident a few years back, and just never felt right ever since. And I didn't know what to tell him, how to, you know, and you don't understand what he's feeling.
The
he's
pain
just like,
he's experiencing,
Mom, you know, but he just knew something wasn't right, and he has a very physical job. He has his own business, but everything is very physical, and he was just struggling, and he has this he's joined this network, business networking.
Yeah.
Group, and he said that one of the guys in his group just kept telling him, you need to try this, and you need to try this, and you just, you know, try this. And so finally he said he tried it. He's like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better.
What was it?
Glucosamine.
Oh, yeah.
A pill of glucosamine. And you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then collagen, which he says he takes as a powder. Right. And he'll sprinkle it in his, morning coffee or orange juice or something. But he says 100%, you know, he could feel immediate difference.
Oh,
and he feels so much better. So it's on a sticky note on my computer, and I'm going to order it. But also know that once I start taking it, hopefully it'll help with, you know, my hands and feet issue, whatever it is. I'm still in denial. But and if it does, then the next time I go see my primary care doctor, my PC, I will let him know that, you know, this was happening and this is what I'm taking, because perhaps I try not to take a lot of supplements because number one, I don't want to, we talked about this before.
Gosh, yeah.
Take a whole bunch of
many pills. Yeah.
Or even, you know, additives to your drinks and drops of this, or, you know, sprinkle a powder of that.
It is always great though if you can find a supplement that does help you as opposed to a prescription, in my opinion.
100%.
I would rather go that route than, but again, it is good to seek advice from your physician, or even people that you know it's worked for. Supplements.
So do you take it? Glucosamine, because you know that.
Yeah,
okay.
I do, and it does help a lot.
See, and I didn't even think to talk to you about it, but
yeah, no, it does help a lot. And one of the things I've mentioned before, you know, I used to be a pretty aggressive exercise, you know, it was weightlifting.
You were,
I did the, you know, CrossFit.
You were my idol for that,
I mean, it's gotten to a point where weightlifting just doesn't work for me. I can do very light weights, but I still feel it. So really what's worked for me is just stretching.
Yeah.
It's huge. And if I go a day or two without doing it because I'm so busy and I don't think about stopping for 20 minutes to just stretch, I feel it.
Wow.
Oh, I feel it.
And that was something that I found online when I was looking up, you know, what it could possibly be. And like I said, it was just always rheumatoid arthritis. And but then it was like how to, you know, what do you do? And exercise and stretching was one of them. So, and they said even for me, before I get out of bed, like my feet, so stretch your feet. Yeah. So the last couple of days I've been doing that in my hands and stuff. I don't see a whole lot of a difference, but just doing that, there is some relief.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, lessened.
The glucosamine will probably help a lot.
I hope so.
I would continue the stretching too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to be careful too, though, with trying to self-diagnose on Google. I always joke, you know, Paige she's not really a hypochondriac, but she gets in her head and gets worked up. And,
as a lot of us do.
Yeah. And I saw a meme once that said, my elbow hurts, and then Google, you have elbow cancer. You know? Because, you know, sometimes it's like, okay, that's ridiculous. Like, so just do definitely be very careful about self-diagnosis. Obviously, if you're having symptoms and you're finding, you know, remedies that you think will work for you that are, you know, pretty harmless that you can try first. That's great. Go ahead and do that. But something that, you know, as far as like hormones, that just don't mess with it. No. Just go to your doctor.
Go to your doctor and get your panels done. And if you're looking at alternative, remedies and, supplements. Just do your research. And as I mentioned, I'm looking at these mushrooms right now, not psychedelics, but just ones for cognitive help and, mental clarity and brain fog. And even within just that, with one specific mushroom, the supplements that pop up are, and I'm looking at all of the ingredient panels, and I'm trying to compare them all, but they're all different. So how do you know? So I continued my research, to find out, to kind of filter through, if you will, all of these, dozens upon dozens of, and some of them, they put a doctor's name on, the label and, recommended by a doctor. But yet through my research, I'm finding that it's not even in the top 10 of the ones that are recommended through research.
Wow.
So, you have to be careful in marketing, and I'm laughing and rolling my eyes, but, it pays the bills, so we don't bite the hand that feeds us. But it can be, misleading and deceptive. So just because it says, a doctor's name on it or recommended by a doctor doesn't necessarily mean it's one of the better ones. So I think in an age and era right now where we have too much information at our fingertips, that the best we can do is just our research and take the time to do the research and not just
and talk with professionals
if
there's something that you're not finding that works for you or making it worse even. So
100%.
Absolutely.
But just keep in mind that it's personalized. That just because your best friend, is on a regimen and maybe they're getting pellets, every quarter or injections and they're seeing great results, and you try it and it's not working the same for you, don't be discouraged because everyone is different. And, what works for you might not work for me. But we can be there to support each other.
Absolutely.
Through the process. And
that's huge.
It is huge.
You got to have support, especially when you're dealing with things like this that can be, really stressful and making things worse as far as your stress level goes. So finding a remedy and having a support group to help you.
Because you question
find resources.
Am I going crazy? Right? Like, am I with some of the symptoms like, sweats and, night sweats and hot flashes and things like that. Those are quite obvious. But other ones, with anxiety and stress and depression and, are you depressed or are you, just going through midlife crisis?
Right. And it could be any age. It doesn't even have to be midlife.
No.
I mean, a lot of kids, I think, are under a lot of pressure these days. And even all the way, as young as middle school and high school. I thank God we didn't have social media when I was growing up because I can't imagine. It's just, like you said, information overload.
Yes.
And sensory overload.
Right.
And I think it's really causing a lot of problems for younger people as well. So it can be anything, and just learning what's affecting you, finding the source of it, and again, just address whatever the stressor is.
Yes.
And
I think you hit it right on the head that it doesn't have to, you don't have to be in midlife, or even in any of the menopausal stages. But interestingly enough, it's when you first start your cycle. For girls, it's when they first start their cycle until a year after their cycle ends. So that is the span that we're talking about.
I started when I was 12.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, but that is when, it starts, and that's when your hormones start to change.
Right. Yeah.
But I think for younger women, it's like you had mentioned before, a lot of doctors will put you on a birth control or try to put you on birth control to balance out the hormones. And that's one of the, ways that they do it when you're younger.
Right.
But it does affect you even when you're younger.
Yeah. My daughter was put on it when she was in high school or I guess just right out of high school. And she had crazy symptoms. I mean, she gained a little bit of weight. Her breasts got so big. The poor girl has stretch marks because it was so instant growth, you know.
Gosh.
Definitely some mood swing issues.
Yeah.
It just didn't work for her.
Right.
So again, there's a lot of different things that doctors will, suggest that may not work, and you just have to go back to them and say, this isn't working. What's the next step?
Yeah.
So.
Work with your doctors.
Right.
Okay. And that just about wraps it up for today. Thank you for joining us on Let's Talk Midlife Crisis. Embrace the change.
Join the conversation on our website at letstalkmidlifecrisis.com or our Facebook or Instagram and YouTube channels. We'd love to hear from you guys.